January 1, 1983 is considered the official birthday of the Internet. Prior to this, the various computer networks did not have a standard way to communicate with each other. The Motorola Dynatac 8000X. In 1983, it became the first commercially available handheld cellular mobile phone. The first handheld cellular mobile phone was demonstrated by John F. Mitchell and Martin Cooper of Motorola in 1973, using a handset that weighed 4 pounds or 2 kilograms. The rate of self-reported loneliness has doubled from what it was in 1980 of about 15% to around 38% in 2024. Statistically speaking, 1 in 3 Americans, which is close to 33%, regularly experience loneliness. According to a study that used survey data from 53,000 middle-aged adults from the United States and 13 European nations from 2002 to 2020. Participants reported changes in loneliness every 2 years. So, why, with all of our new technology and new ways to interact with other people, are we so lonely and isolated? What has this technology created? Well, first it is important to take into consideration why this technology was created and how it's being used. For my first example, I will use social media and dating apps. On the surface, you would assume that something with the word social in the title would be about human engagement. Well, you would be wrong. First and foremost, these technologies are being sold as products, but the users are the capital to be sold and traded on these products. Without people on the platform, there is no incentive to use those platforms. If the end goal of social media was to promote social behavior, there would be no more use for the social media. So it is imperative for the owner and proprietor of a social media platform to keep users engaged. This has led to what is known as gamification.
Gamification.
The application of typical elements of game playing, e.g. point scoring, competition with others, rules of play, to other areas of activity, typically as an online marketing technique to encourage engagement with a product or service. Gamification is exciting because it promises to make the hard stuff in life fun.
You see this regularly with companies like Amazon, where they're frequently offering customers all kinds of incentives for discounts, such as whether you buy X amount of things, you will receive a discount off of your next purchase, etc., etc. Social media does this as well by offering us subscribers, viewers, likes, followers, and an assortment of perks largely designed to either raise the esteem or punish, in some cases, the user. Gamification preys on the common fallacy that correlation is causation. Much like a slot machine, these devices trick you into believing that the more you invest, the more you will receive. So, why is this the case? The ultimate goal of online dating apps should be to function as a conduit in creating committed relationships, right? The realm of online dating has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, an industry that profits primarily off of user addiction, especially by keeping its users single. The way that the industry accomplishes this is twofold, relying on qualities of gamification and what psychologist Barry Schwartz refers to as the paradox of choice. The presence of the choice paradox in online dating is perhaps best understood through the analogy of online shopping. Studies have shown that as shoppers are exposed to more options for potential purchases, they are paradoxically less likely to be satisfied with their ultimate decision. As our brains become inundated with a variety of choices, we often experience choice paralysis, an anxiety-induced state that prevents us from making a resounding decision. This phenomenon is known as the paradox of choice, and it is becoming a concern in the modern world, where more and more options are becoming easily available to us.
The paradox of choice.
The paradox of choice stipulates that while we might believe that being presented with multiple options actually makes it easier to choose one that we are happy with, and thus increases consumer satisfaction, having an abundance of options actually requires more effort to make a decision and can leave us feeling unsatisfied with our choice. If we only had to choose between 1% and 2% milk, it is easier to know which option we prefer, since we can easily weigh the pros and cons. When the number of choices increases, so does the difficulty of knowing what is best. Instead of increasing our freedom to have what we want, the paradox of choice suggests that having too many choices actually limits our freedom. As we make social, scientific and technological advances, we find ourselves with more options than were available to previous generations. The choice of what to buy is only one example of an overabundance of choices. There are hundreds of options for what kind of clothes we should purchase, the groceries we should buy, the car we should be driving, the beauty products we should be using, the restaurant we should eat at. The list goes on and on. While on the surface, the influx of options might seem like it should increase satisfaction. Under the assumption that people are more likely to find one option that fits their particular wants and needs, we can also become overwhelmed. While it is easy to choose option 1 if there is only an option 2, it becomes much harder to gauge the value and utility of 2 when there are options 1 to 10. This becomes even more complicated when your variables are living people with their own wants and needs. The paradox of choice is not only a concern for economics and consumer satisfaction, but an issue that is popping up in various areas of our lives as our possibilities come nearer and nearer to being infinite. Moreover, the internet and social media has made it easier for us to see all the different options that are available to us, no longer having to physically stand in a store to determine what our options are. Fast-paced advances being made in technology and science also mean that there seems to be new kinds of jobs created on the daily, not to mention all the different social media applications that create a whole host of jobs, influencers, social media specialists, etc. Social media has also changed the way that we choose a life partner. Dating apps like Tinder and Hinge have enabled people to have dozens of options of who to date at their fingertips. Still, a survey of 2,000 people by Scribbler last year found that both men and women would far prefer to meet a partner on a night out. App users complain of matches that lead nowhere, rude or boring conversations, and bad behavior on dates. Worst of all, the apps make people seem disposable, one swipe and they're gone, and cultivate the feeling that however many hours you put into searching and messaging, a real relationship will be impossible to come by. This addictive form of dating traps us in a loop of searching for partners, sometimes at the cost of actually meeting them. The technology does this in 4 ways, starting with solitude. Even if you're playing online poker and there are technically other people at your virtual table. Or if you're on a dating app and there are other people to talk to, the interaction with the app is really just you and the screen. The drive is for human connection and maybe love or sex. You don't want to go out to the party anymore. You want to stay in your room, scrolling. Work done by 20th century psychologist B.F. Skinner, Skull argues, explains another piece of the puzzle. He developed the Skinner box, in which rats or pigeons could access pellets of food by pressing levers. What he discovered was that the animals would be most persistent with the levers when the rewards were unpredictable. If you knew that you could peck 10 times and get a pellet, you'd do that when you were hungry and then stop, says Skull. But if you never know what's coming and you never know when, you will stay there pecking. On dating apps, your perfect partner might appear on your next swipe, or your 10th swipe, or your 47th. That makes it harder to stop looking. The final factor, she says, is that the pool that we're fishing in seems bottomless. The app is not going to say, "We have nothing for you. Go to bed." So there's a death and mourning of possibility when you shut it down or log out. Endogenous opioids, produced in the brain, create satisfaction as part of natural rewards. So if you eat a good meal, eventually you'll get full. If you have an orgasm, the body doesn't necessarily want to have another orgasm. It feels satisfied. That's an opioid reaction. Whereas the dopamine reaction that we get from a Tinder match doesn't give satisfaction. The app designers have tapped into this system. Infinite scrolling and swiping do not lead to satiety. Perhaps most dangerously, app interactions can fool us into thinking that we know someone better than we do. When we have an initial good impression of someone online, we fill in the blanks with positives. I think this is what led, between 2011 and 2016, to a six-fold increase in serious sexual assaults carried out by strangers who'd met online dating. The Match Group, which owns Tinder and several other big dating services, has suffered a stock price drop of over 50% this year. There are signs that young daters are unsatisfied with what's on offer. 90% of Gen Z say that they're frustrated with apps, and 40% say they're happily single. Part of me thinks that's a positive development, but if people are just generally becoming more self-focused, that makes relationships harder. The individualism that's promoted by everything that allows us to create a little universe to our liking, including apps, it definitely makes coupling up harder. Either way, Tinder may eventually die, but its legacy is already profound. App dating is with us, it's evolving, and every new iteration of data science is being taken into that sphere. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far. If you enjoyed what I had to say or found it interesting, I may do more on this topic or others. Have a good day or night.